a very, I think, a very appropriate towards the end of the show on the 50th anniversary of this. I have another cold open, another very important guest. Let's go ahead and we got something. Now, the other night, we had Eduardo on by Skype, and we're talking about they had already passed this ruling that his father couldn't run at 26, others 130, although his father's up a bunch of points. You know the lawfare of these out-of-control judges. Last segment, we just had D.C. Drano. What the President of the United States may have to do is suspend the writ of habeas corpus for illegal aliens here in the country to get around the judges here. In Brazil, they're 10 times worse. Let's go ahead and play this clip, and we'll bring in Eduardo.
Boa tarde. É uma citação e uma intimação. A citação é para tomar ciência dos termos da acusação e a intimação para apresentar a defesa prévia no prazo de 5 dias. Tá?
Eu tenho 5 dias para apresentar. Eu sei que a senhora precisa de justiça, por favor. Tá? Eu tenho 5 dias para apresentar a minha defesa prévia. 5 dias. É isso mesmo?
O senhor é advogado, né?
Não, não sou advogado, não.
Não, digo assim, o senhor advogado tem esse prazo, né? Em nome do senhor, claro.
Ele faz a defesa comigo.
Sim.
That breaks my heart right there. Eduardo Bolsonaro joins us in the war room. Eduardo, that happened about an hour after you were on the show the other day. Tell us what went on there.
Yes, this video shows official envoy, official court that Alexandre de Moraes sent to is an ICU there. It's not only that he's in the hospital, but it's an ICU. This is 100% against the Brazilian law, by the way. The law in Brazil do not allow things like that happen. And it was 10 days after a 12-hour surgery of my father. And the question is...
Hold on, I want to make sure everybody, particularly a new viewer, it's 10 days after a 12-hour surgery. That is, how many surgeries has he had going back to the assassination attempt?
This last one was the 7th.
So 7 surgeries.
Yes.
This last one took 12 hours.
Yes, it was the most
and
invasive
he's 10 days,
one.
he's still the most invasive. He's still there, all hooked up to his nose.
He wasn't even eating, because if you see the tube that comes through his nose, it's to feed him. So he cannot eat, but Alexandre de Moraes sends someone basically to stress him. And I have no answer for that, but in proposal to bring some damage to his health, because in my opinion, what Alexandre de Moraes is looking for is to kill my father. Because they know that doesn't matter what they label him as racist, xenophobic, nazist, whatever, it didn't work. He got elected. And now still, if you look for the polls, he's leading the polls. And now even outside of the margin error. So in a second round, Bolsonaro against Lula, Bolsonaro is about 6 points ahead of Lula. So they are really desesperated. The establishment of Brazil, led by Alexandre de Moraes, they want to kill my father, or at least convict him and send him to jail still this year. So there is no way that Bolsonaro could even try to run on the next year election. Because you're going to ask me, Eduardo, he cannot run. Yeah, that's right. But because 2 things. Because he met ambassadors and criticized the electoral process, and because in 2022, when he was sitting president, and in 2022, he made a speech after the Independence Day military parade, using no public money for that. So it's 2 very weak reasons to do not let Bolsonaro run to be the president.
They're made up reasons. There's no reason to this. This is all they're trying. Number one, they stole the election. I would actually argue that, and we know in the show that they stole the 2020, and the American people know that's how they restored President Trump to the presidency. I would actually argue that a more brazen stealing of the election than even President Trump, which was as brazen as you could get, was the stealing of the election from your father. The Chinese Communist Party and the Marxists, both in the court system and Lula and hardcore Marxists, must control the resources and assets from the Amazon and all the agriculture and all the resources of Brazil. And they're not going to let anything stand in the way. This is essentially like the Bolsheviks in 1917. Am I anything on that I'm incorrect?
Yes, sure. And if I can add, Steve, Lula, like 5 months ago, signed together with Xi Jinping 37 agreements. Some agreements in the area of energy, satellite communication, uranium, all of these reserves. So basically China, what they are doing in Brazil is the same playbook that they did with Africa, trying to play all the assets, bring some nice infrastructure to Brazil. And this is one
predatory capitalism, where they lend you money, you can't pay back, and then they own the asset.
Yes, and you stay on their hands. And the fact that I'm here is also because they were threatening to seize my passport if I go back to Brazil. So now I'm exiled in Texas. If I come back to Brazil, Alexandre de Moraes, he was going to seize my passport. He made an official request to the Attorney General asking about that. Because if I come back to Brazil, my party said that I was going to be the chairman of the Foreign Affairs and National Defense Committee, which is the first committee in the Congress to analyze these 37 agreements, because after the president signed the agreement, the Congress has to approve, and so it would be on my hands. Imagine that. The power that I would have in this relation between Lula da Silva and China. So it's a high risk that I'll be representing the interests of the Brazilians that do not want that Brazil become China. So is everybody connected? Everything is connected. If you look, it's so clear, and they do not hide that anymore. If you see this official court going to summon to serve my father inside of an ICU is just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Well, I want to go. So they put these charges up of a coup d'etat, which your father was just questioning about the stolen election. So then they charge him with coup d'etat. Then you get into the process, and they come up with this ruling where he can't run in 26, but maybe he'll run it in 30. He then has to take a timeout from the other trial to go for surgery, this 12-hour surgery, the 7th surgery. Was it the feeling that that was just going to be delayed indefinitely or just kind of go away, or did you guys have a sense? Because it looked like as soon as they laid out that you couldn't run in 26, then they came in and dropped the hammer, even if they had to go into the ICU and give it, serve your father basically right there with the trial's not going to be delayed and we're going to get you back in the trial.
They learned with you here in the United States. So the message, what they talk behind the scenes, the Supreme Court is, we have to convict Bolsonaro as fast as possible, so we are not going to repeat the mistake of the United States that let Trump run. So this virus is coming back to Brazil, and now you are facing problems. Trump is facing problems here with judges, like in courts, trying to stop of his orders, like people non-elected, It's unbelievable that it's the same thing. It's not hard to explain to the Americans, to your audience, what is going on in Brazil, but in Brazil, they are more aggressive. It's the same virus. The problem is that in Brazil, we have less antibodies than United States. But we hope that it's coming a good help from the United States.
Oh, no. We're going to get to that about what's going on and what's going behind the scenes and what would be public. I want to go to a character. Our audience is very familiar with Lula. Mm-hmm. We have spent years going through it. They know he's a Marxist, a hardcore communist. He's been totally corrupt, been in prison for corruption. I mean, it's obviously one of the most corrupt guys in the world, a junior partner of the CCP. But they're not that familiar with Morales. Talk to us about the courts. I think what's shocked people here is because the courts here make some radical decisions, but the judges try to downplay who they are in their role. This Morales is almost like a Bond villain from a Bond movie. I mean, he's very aggressive. He's very in the media. He's almost like a supervillain, right? Explain who he is and why does he have so much power?
Yes, he has so much power because the only one that can stop him is the Senate. But the Speaker of the Senate already said that he's not going to move forward impeachment proceedment against Moraes. So he's 100% comfortable to do whatever they want, and you have no one to appeal. He's in the Supreme Court. And he like to show himself as someone aggressive, so he intimidates other people. Like you had the January 6th here, we had the January 8th, 2023 there in Brazil. What Moraes is doing, like he is getting the passport, he's freezing banking accounts. He convicted more than 400 people because of that, for punishment of even 17 years in jail. You have a couple of people that have more than 70 years old that are...
Hold it, 70 years in prison?
17 years in prison.
Wow.
For example, Miss Iraci Nagashi. She is 71 years old. You have some others that they have more than 70 years old. These are the terrorists in Brazil that Moraes is sending to jail, saying that he's doing that to protect our democracy. But they are only, like, they are paying the bill, as we say in Brazil. They are paying the bill to be the argument for Alexandre de Moraes to arrest Bolsonaro. Because the crimes that they say that Bolsonaro is charged for are crimes that go to almost 40 years in jail. So we guess that they are going to convict my father for something about 30 years maybe, and then send him to jail like forever, because my father nowadays is 70 years old. But even like that, he's still leading the polls. Now imagine if he was able to run and there was no confusion in the political scenario of Brazil, how many voters would say that they were going to vote for Bolsonaro? What I want to say is, if Bolsonaro can run, he will have easily more than 55 or maybe 60% of the votes in Brazil in the next election. Because now even the
55 or 60.
Yeah, I would say
Yes.
that. Because
And you can see this from the crowds that he's been drawing. I mean, these crowds, I've never seen crowds like this. I mean, you guys have had these big crowds historically. It's kind of the way you first got started. People were running in the airports. In fact, the first time I met you in the summer of 2018, we talked, and I said, look, you guys have got this. Just keep doing what you're doing. The only thing I warned you, I said, because Bolsonaro would come into the airport, and every different part of the airport would come in and meet and like toss him up like a soccer game. I said, I'm concerned about the security. And
Yeah,
2 weeks
me
later,
too.
the assassination attempt, a guy came in and knifed him, and it turned out to be much more serious than we knew at the time. Now 7 operations, the last one for 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
His popularity increases because of his principles and because of the personality. I think also because of how much he's giving to Brazil, particularly in coming back like he has. That's why they hate him more. That's why they have to. That's why they have to send him to prison.
yeah, sure. And it's still nowadays like that. Like we did 1 month ago, a big rally. And when we do rallies, I mean, we go to the streets and people just show up in a Paulista Avenue in São Paulo, or even in Copacabana Beach in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. We are talking about at least of 500,000 people on the streets. Sometimes, like last year, it was about 1 million people on the streets. So his popularity is increasing because people realize when they go to the supermarkets, the prices of everything is going up. Doesn't matter how much Lula da Silva paid the mainstream media in Brazil. People realize that the life is going to get worse and worse. And we do not have a pandemic, and we do not have a war starting in Europe. So imagine Bolsonaro president with no pandemic and no war starting in Europe. It would be like a dream of a government. And if you think that you are going to have Trump in the United States, Milei in Argentina, I hope that Colombia and Chile are going to overturn these left-wing presidents on the next elections that will be almost the same time of Brazil. We can have the whole region far away from the left, I guess, for the first time in history.
No, it reverses the Paulo, the whole thing of them trying to make
Foro de São Paulo.
São Paulo trying to make Latin America communist. It would be a complete reversal. That's why they must put your father in jail.
Yes,
right? And they must in jail. Is there any doubt in your mind? Once he's in prison, they're going to try to have him assassinated.
Yes, and this will be the consolidation of the regime. It will be like we are in a point, Steve, to your audience understand, we are in a point that still diplomatic medicine can have effect. After they consolidate the power, if they put someone from the left next year again in the presidency, or someone from the, as I can say, like a permitted right as president,
The controlled opposition, you're saying?
forget about that. Brazil will be like Venezuela. You're going to see here in the United States more and more Brazilians coming to live in the United States because people will lose the rope, and Alexandre de Moraes will be the whole powerful man, ruling the country and doing whatever he wants. So this is a nightmare, but still we have a window of opportunity that if Alexandre de Moraes gets sanctioned with OFAC sanctions, this could stop his dictator willing and
explain to our audience why, because, and people in Brazil should know this, this is getting the scrutiny at the highest levels here in Washington, D.C., because Morales is so out of control, and people in Brazil should understand that. Explain to people what OFAC means, why it's so important here as something to actually start to bring Morales to justice.
OFAC sanctions is basically, in popular language, is the death penalty, is the financial death penalty. So it means that the person who received this sanction, they cannot even have a credit card, Visa or MasterCard, American Express credit card, because he will be out of the SWIFT system for international transactions. He's forbidden to open a bank account. I mean, if a bank allow him to open an account in the bank, this bank cannot use the SWIFT system where the supercomputers are here in the United States. So it's basically what the United States did recently with other justice of the Supreme Court, but from Venezuela, Michael Moreno, and also with Karim Khan, which is the prosecutor of the ICC, the International Criminal Court. And it sure will send a huge message to the Supreme Court in Brazil. And I don't think that any other of the 10 justices that we have in our Supreme Court, they could have the same courage of Moraes to go ahead with the censorship, with the persecution against the right, the human rights violation. Because we have even a guy that died in prison. His name is Clezão. He died in prison, and he was arrested because January 8th, and his lawyers and even the Attorney General asked Alexandre de Moraes to release him, but Alexandre de Moraes did not release the guy, and unfortunately he was died in jail. And Alexandre de Moraes is doing way more. Only to finish with this answer, he was sending arresting warrants against American citizens. Imagine that. A lady called Flávia Cordeiro, he was tweeting, talking about the Supreme Court here in the United States. And Alexandre de Moraes was sending arresting order against this lady. So you have a bunch of arguments to sanction Moraes. And what I see behind the scenes from people around the White House and around the Congress, I don't want to talk about their names, this issue is getting hotter and hotter. And I guess sooner or later Trump is going to do that, and we have a big hope that it can rescue our democracy in Brazil.
Will this shut down Morales immediately? You call it the financial death penalty. What will it mean for him personally?
Personally, doesn't matter how much money he has, he cannot spend the money. And doesn't matter who, anyone else that do contracts with him or any kind of commercial relation with him, they also receive the same kind of sanctions. So he basically, he's isolated. No one is going to be together with Moraes.
Why has it been so tough, do you think? Why do you think it's been so tough to get this? Why do you think it's been so tough to get this rolling today? Because
we have to bring all of the information that what is happening in Brazil to the authorities in the United States. And this is so hard because Trump, he has so many things to do. If you look to the hostages in Gaza, you still have hostages in Gaza on the hands of Hamas. You have the Ukrainian war. You have the concerns about the Panama Canal and some other things that are going on. All of the illegal immigrants that are here, criminals that he has to send back to other countries or to jail in El Salvador. So the whole world is coming here to knock on Trump's door. And it's tough to get an opportunity to get the attention of the authorities. It's not that they do not want. I mean, they are really also opening the doors.
Yes.
I'm very grateful because of that.
Yes. And I also think it's caught some people by surprise. Not the war memorial posse, but I think it's even caught people in this town by surprise how radical Brazil has gone so quickly. They knew about Lula, but to see that the courts are actually, I would argue, more radical than Lula.
Yes, for sure. If you ask me what is the number one enemy of the democracy in Brazil, it's Alexandre de Moraes. It's not Lula. For sure, Lula is supporting.
You're saying he's the number one threat to democracy.
Yes, Alexandre de Moraes.
The Supreme Court justice.
Yes. Because basically, he's killing the opposition. There is no way to have free elections next year with Alexandre de Moraes that powerful. Like, I'm also leading the polls for the Senate by the state of São Paulo next year, by far. But I'm sure that he will not let me run, because if we build the majority in the Senate, we can impeach him. So 100% that he's looking for all the candidates.
You think that he'll come up with phony charges if you were to go back and try to limit you to from running in 26?
For sure, not only me, but all the other conservative people that is looking forward to run for the Senate. This is 100%, because in Brazil we have a law, Steve, that if you receive a conviction from the Supreme Court, you cannot run. We say that is the clean background law.
Yeah.
You need a clean background to run. So the judges, they have this power to control who is going to run and who is not.
Why don't you hang on? You're going to hang on through the break. Eduardo Bolsonaro joins us in the House. Eduardo is now living here in the United States, at least temporarily, till this situation gets sorted out. I can tell you this is at the highest levels. And people in Brazil, messing around with Bolsonaro, he is a revered world figure. It's kind of shocking to me. You see that when they're going into the ICU unit and serving him with some document to continue the trial, when everybody knows, okay, if it's got to be done, it's got to be done. You don't need to do it that way. You're just trying to instigate trouble, right? And I think people see that.